Hi everyone, welcome to Sunny Day Discussions. I am Sunny Day. First off, I want to tell you about the mass shootings that have happened since I last talked about it on, I think the 13th was the last time I touched on it. Since the 14th of June until the 19th of June, just yesterday, there have been 25 mass shootings. Just 16 happened on the 17th and 18th alone. But the main point of this video is to talk about how America keeps low-income people with very low, or keeps them poor. There are so many different things that this country does that make sure that people who cannot afford to live continue on that way and almost are punished for their low income. For instance, when you have a checking account and they have a minimum amount you have to have in there, usually about $300 to $500, in order to avoid a monthly service fee. Now at our bank, it's $500 minimum and a $10 monthly service fee if you go below that. Most people can't afford having that $500 in there. And then say it's a month where, you always live paycheck to paycheck. You count your pennies. Every penny is spent wisely and with a purpose. But on this particular month, you got sick and had to call in to work for a couple of days. But the job you have pays minimum wage and doesn't offer benefits or paid sick leave. So now you have a shorter paycheck. And those 2 days mean you have to decide between electricity, paying the electric bill, or feeding the kids. So you decide that, payday's coming up soon. I'll risk it. I'll pay the electric bill and I'll get some food, hopefully get us by, like dried goods like beans or rice. And then that bank statement comes in and all of that was withdrawn before you got your next paycheck. So you are approximately $5 over your limit, or over what you have overdrawn. So what does the bank do? They charge you $30 as a punishment fee. So now you're $35 over. Now, that is a vicious cycle that can keep continuing, because if you can't make enough money to cover that and get back up to the $300 to $500, you're just going to keep getting charged $10 a month. Anytime you get under that zero, you're going to keep getting charged $30 a month. And anytime you get further and further into that, they charge you more until you get back to a balance, a positive balance in your checkbook. So there's punishment right there, just for struggling to buy food. And when it comes to credit cards, there's a lot of low-income people that don't qualify for credit cards. But those that do tend to get charged exorbitantly high interest rates, overdraft fees, just really a bad deal on the credit cards. Whereas the rich people get lower interest rates, just better deals all around on the cards. Now, the criminal justice system, same thing. So, like I said, you live paycheck to paycheck. Every penny is spent and budgeted. You happen to get pulled over because you had a taillight that's out. You were unaware of it. And so you get a citation. Well, you can't afford to pay that citation. So therefore you get a late fee. And if you can't pay that and the late fee, you could get jail time. In that jail time, you're not going to work. You're not earning money. So you get even further in debt. and it's a vicious cycle. With healthcare, there is a large section of the population who make too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but not enough to afford private insurance. So they're kind of just stuck in the middle and have to hope that they don't have any sort of medical emergency. Because like most people, they can't afford a $500 surprise bill because every penny is budgeted. And it seems that the politicians, particularly conservative politicians, try to say, you know, if you just worked a little bit harder, you could become wealthy. You could pull yourself out of this. While at the same time, fighting against wage increases, fighting against any sort of government assistance, fighting against anything that could help you, pull you out of poverty. Now, there's this trope that conservatives like to use ever since Reagan, and it's called welfare queen. Now, welfare queen, the term, is completely blown out of proportion because the person, I believe her name was Linda Taylor, was actually far more than someone who defrauded the welfare system. So when you think of the welfare queen, when conservatives mention it, you think, and they want you to think, people of color, single mothers that are just lazy, that are drug addicts, or who want to buy a fancy car and not work for it. Well, that term welfare queen came from, like I said, this Linda Taylor, I believe her name was, and according to the census, American Census Bureau, she was Caucasian. But what Reagan wanted you to believe is that she was able to defraud the government for over $100,000 in a year. But the actuality of that is that she defrauded the welfare system, but only about $8,000 worth. But they also neglect to mention that she was a con artist. She could pass for a Black woman if it suited her. She could pass for an Asian woman if it suited her. She had wigs. She had identities. She was charged with kidnapping, with murder. Now, these are all alleged because I don't know the outcomes of the court cases or anything. But there was so much more to her than just scamming welfare. So it's kind of become like this justification that conservatives need to cut these programs that help people with low income. Because they say, well, see, people are just using it to be lazy. They're just using it to sit around and buy fun things without actually having to work for it, when that is actually not the case. The vast majority of people who use these welfare benefits need them and work for a living and do their best to provide for their families in any way they can, and that assistance helps them. Most people aren't defrauding the government. In fact, a very, very, very small percentage, I think it's less than 1% of all people who utilize the systems actually defraud the government. So it's become this tool that conservatives use to justify wanting to slash these funds. And I don't know why they hate these funds so much. I don't know why they want to punish the poor. And I don't know why everyone lets them. I don't know why we sit back and let the banks charge fees punishing people who are poor. Why we let landlords shoot up the rent rates sky high I mean, there has been analysis that has shown that landlords who own rental properties in poor neighborhoods make more money than landlords who own properties, rental properties, in wealthier neighborhoods. Go figure. And then back to the healthcare system. It is far cheaper to eat a crap diet than it is to buy fruits and vegetables. So with a lack of nutrition, a lack of adequate housing, low-income people tend to need healthcare more than people who make an adequate living. So they need those benefits, yet they're punished for them. And with all of these fees, it prevents them from pulling themselves out. In other words, it's like the government wants the haves and have-nots. And in order to prevent the have-nots from becoming haves, they just charge them any little tiny fee that they can to keep them there. Maybe because it makes them feel better about themselves, even if they're not the ultra wealthy, even if they're just a comfortable middle class. Do they need the low income people to feel better about themselves? Do they need them to feel like that maybe they're better? I don't know. I don't get it. Why not lend a hand, pull these people out of poverty, and then they can support themselves? Help out by having living wages, by having affordable rent, by having healthy groceries that people can afford, by having well-funded public education in poor neighborhoods, by having just well-funded neighborhoods so you can keep the streets clean from glass. And it's statistically, in poorer neighborhoods, there is more crime because people can't afford to have enough. And it blows my mind, the narrow view that a lot of these politicians have when it comes to poverty. They think, well, I did it. Why can't you? Well, when they did it, the wages were keeping up with inflation. You could afford to go to school part-time and work part-time and pay for it. You can't anymore. It's impossible. So that's how this country keeps its poor poor and keeps us divided and points fingers and blame. So, end of the video, awkwardness. I hope you like, I hope you share, and I hope you subscribe. Thanks, I'll see you next time.